I do think it's one of the best in the world, or one of my favourites that I've ever visited. Hey pairs, I'm Hannah and today I'm going to be talking about London and leaving London, living in London, what it's like, whether I like it. This is a iPhone video, so I apologise for that because my DSLR has decided that it will only let me film 37 seconds worth of footage, and I have a lot more to say about London than 37 seconds worth. So Edwina did a video a while ago which was all about things that she likes and dislikes about Paris. So I thought I would do a similar kind of thing about London. Originally she had said she wanted to talk about London and I wouldn't let her because she has a very negative view of London and I think it's a great city. So firstly, let's start off with a few things that I like about London and then move on to a few things that I don't like so much. So before we get into the video, please also like and subscribe. That would be super helpful to our channel and we are so grateful to all of you that are here. So first thing that I absolutely adore about London is the size, which is the opposite of what Edwina said in her last video. I find that living in a much bigger city enables you to do like a million different things. So I some days will go and like play tennis, and then straight afterwards I'll go to like a brand new coffee shop, and then I'll go and like see another friend and go out for dinner, obviously on days when there is not COVID. And other days you'll be able to like go to a museum. Some of my favorite times have been like going to random events in museums and staying there for like 4 hours, and it's like a museum I've never even heard of before. So I absolutely love that there is always like so much to do in the city, so many things I haven't even heard of. The second thing is that there are little kind of boroughs in London that become like your home. So they're like small towns within this massive city. So where I was living had like a very like family feel. I think a lot of people my age would find it quite boring, but I used to love how safe it would feel and how calm and quiet. And then on the weekends I would go and travel to like a different borough to go and do something fun. But you feel like you're in a small little town in the city. So I absolutely love that about London. The other thing I really like about the city is that I already knew people there. So I'm sure a lot of people have this when they move back to their home country from their like host country. So I lived in Paris for a year and then I moved back to London, and I already had friends there because so many of my friends had moved from our little town into the big city. I absolutely loved already knowing people in the city, which is obviously not something that I had in Paris. Even though I was trying to meet new people and like widen my circle, and I was doing a course, so I was kind of getting to know people that way, I still had like old family friends and old school friends who I could rely on when I was feeling lonely and sad, which is obviously not something that you have when you're an au pair. So it's not the most exciting reason to move to a city, but I don't know, as I get older I do like living in a place where I already know a few people. So the next thing that I really like about living in London is that I know the culture. It's terrible, and Edwina and I definitely recommend like moving abroad and getting to, you know, experience living in a different city and a different culture and getting to know like something that is very different from what you already know, but going back to something that you know from living abroad, you have this just like great sense of like, oh my god, like I know how things work here. Like I can talk to the cashier, I wouldn't say cashier, I can talk to the person at the checkout without cringing at my awful French accent or German accent or whatever. My next point, and something that I love about London, is that it's weirdly classed as a forest. There are enough trees in the city for it to be classed as a forest, and we all know that that's just rubbish and we need more trees everywhere. But I do like that in London, especially where I used to live, you could get to a park really quickly, you could get to some greenery really quickly, and even though it's not as great as like living in the countryside, I would say, you know, it's pretty cool to be able to live so close to a park. I lived like right next to the river. I used to go on like long runs, long walks every day. Just loved living where I used to live. It's not like that everywhere obviously in London, and I was very lucky to live in a really nice place, although I was on a main road. But yeah, the green spaces are pretty good in London. Like Hyde Park is the best. Okay, so I'll give you some negatives. So number one, the biggest thing for me was that the flat that I was just living in had mice, and I don't know, mice are really cute, and I do actually really like basically anything that's fluffy, but it's not the best to have mice in your house, like, you know, just scurrying around. And I've been told that that's like very common for a lot of people, so yeah, not my fave thing. I think if you're an au pair in London and you live with like a super fancy family, though, mice aren't going to be a problem. But if you live in like a small 2-bedroom flat that's quite cold and damp, yeah, that's another thing, damp, you know, mice are gonna like just come up through the floorboards. I'm definitely not scared of mice, but I wouldn't choose to have them in my house. Number 2, I would say, is the cars. Like, London could be an amazing city if we could just like get rid of a lot of the cars. Like, who needs a car in London? We
have a tube system, we have bike lanes, we have buses that go every 2 minutes.
Like, London's a great place for just being able to hop on a train and be in Scotland, you know, like you don't need a car in London. I would definitely get rid of all the cars if I was like London mayor. Probably a bit controversial, but I just hate coming out of my flat and like the first inhalation being just like fumes, you know. Yeah, fewer cars please. Oh, another thing about London that needs to go is the crazy high prices of rent. Like, I would love for London to be a bit more rent controlled. I actually managed to find a pretty good place because I had the luxury of being able to spend months and months and months looking before I settled on a place. So my place wasn't too expensive. It was about £1.5 grand for a 2-bedroom place, which in London is pretty good. But you know, it would be better if it was a bit cheaper to live there. Finally, the last thing about London is, if you don't like busy cities, this is definitely not the place for you. And so I actually really loved it when I was a freelancer because I was able to kind of go out in the middle of the day and avoid the crowds. But on the weekends, I used to kind of not love how every single bar you would go to would be crazy busy. So I do realise I think I've said more negative points about London than I've said positive, but I definitely do love living in this amazing city. I do think it's one of the best in the world, or one of my favourites that I've ever visited. So let me know in the comments what you think of London. I'd love to hear your opinion. And also please like and subscribe, that does our channel wonders. Check out our website and also check out our blog and Instagram. That's all for now. Ciao!